As ever, and most importantly, we want to hear from you this Monday night. It's a crucial part of the programme. Email me, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now it's time for the news of the day with my old pal, Polly Middlehurst.
Chris, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, as Chris was just saying, MPs are due to vote tonight on 10 changes to the Rwanda bill, amendments suggested by peers in the House of Lords. Peers have been considering and debating the controversial legislation over the last few weeks, and now it's down to the Commons. The legislation aiming to deter illegal migrants from coming to the UK on small boats by deporting them to Rwanda. Downing Street says the initial cohort of people is now being contacted, with the Prime Minister still determined to see the first plane departing later this spring.
It's important that we get the Rwanda scheme up and running because we need to have a deterrent. We need to make it clear that if you come here illegally, you won't be able to stay and we will be able to remove you. That is the only way to properly solve the issue of illegal migration. Now, we've made good progress. Boat numbers were down by a third last year, so that shows that our plan is working. But in order to finish the job, we need the Rwanda scheme through. We're getting it through Parliament. Everyone is trying to block us, including the Labour Party, because they don't have a plan to tackle this problem. We do. I'm determined to see it through, get the deterrent up and running as quickly as possible.
Well, the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, spoke to GB News today in the House of Commons lobby. She said the government needs to get a grip on the situation.
We need to strengthen our border security and fix the chaos in the asylum system, because under the Conservatives we've really seen criminal gangs take hold along the Channel, and then this huge soaring backlog with asylum hotel use that is costing the taxpayer billions. So instead of all the gimmicks that we've had from Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives, our plan is to get a grip. That starts with the new cross-border police to go after the criminal gangs, to smash the gang networks and prevent boats arriving on the French coast in the first place.
Well, the Prime Minister was out and about in the West Midlands today, announcing plans to create 20,000 new apprenticeships, pledging £60 million worth of new investment to cover fully funded training for young people and a reduction in red tape for small businesses who take them on. Mr Sunak says the full cost of apprenticeships will be offered to applicants aged under 21 at small firms from the 1st of April. Now, the former Environment Minister, Zac Goldsmith, has been banned from driving for a year. It's after he was caught breaking the speed limit 7 times, driving in London between April and November last year. The Conservative peer was also caught speeding on 2 motorways, most recently in December, in his hybrid electric car. He did plead guilty to all the offences and was fined £5,500 and ordered to pay a surcharge of a further £2,000 as well as costs. Tata Steel will begin shutting down operations at its site in Port Talbot from Wednesday, they say, due to stability concerns. The steel group has said it's been forced to make the closures earlier than previously planned because the equipment can no longer be run safely. Coke ovens are used to turn coal into coke, a key raw material used in the process of making steel. Well, Tata has about 40 remaining coke ovens operational, with many having already been shut down since they started running in 1981. That's the news. For the very latest stories, do sign up for GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on the screen right now or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back. Now, the Rwanda plan could be soon law, as soon as Thursday, in fact. But Rishi Sunak still has to deal with his counterparts in Kigali, who are insisting on a staggered start to migrant deportations. The government may have claimed that already they've identified migrants for the first flight. They're looking for the cohort now. But there are many things to consider here. The House of Lords could vote down the plan on Wednesday if it goes to the Commons tonight. But this is unlikely, as they probably won't want to create a constitutional crisis, although Sunak could eventually force it through Parliament with the Parliament Act. Whatever the result of this parliamentary ping-pong, the plan will not be quite ready for takeoff. The Rwandan government wants to pause the scheme for 2 months after the first flight, which would mean we'd have 1 flight in May at the earliest, that's the spring deadline the PM has set, and then the next in July. Now, many are looking at the numbers and asking if any of this is actually worth it. The total cost of sending 300 migrants, that's 300 migrants, is, wait for it, £500 million, a considerable amount of money by anyone's calculations, even Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Now, Labour MP Neil Coyle claimed in the Commons today that the Virgin Galactic business can send 6 people to space for the amount the government is planning to spend one migrant to Rwanda. With space tickets on sale for between £150,000 and £350,000, and the National Audit Office, which looks after public spending for Parliament, estimating that the taxpayer could be forking out £2 million per migrant, that number does check out. The Labour are attacking the cost, and they've proposed their own ideas. I spoke to Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, earlier today, and she said this.
Conservatives, we've really seen criminal gangs take hold along the channel, and then this huge soaring backlog with asylum hotel use that is costing the taxpayer billions. So yeah, we would use that money, instead of putting it into the Rwanda scheme, to putting it into strengthening our border security instead. Let's actually start to tackle some of the problem at source and go after those criminal gangs that are making a fortune from putting lives at risk and undermining our border security.
Now, the costs may be literally astronomical, but the government maintains that the deterrence factor is worth it and will stop the boats by breaking the business model of these people traffickers. So where are we, and where do we go from here, you ask? Well, don't worry, my guests are here to work it all out for you. Don't forget to let me know your thoughts, mailmog@gbnews.com. With me now is Tory MP for South Swindon, Sir Robert Buckland, one of tonight's possible rebels. Sir Robert, welcome to the GB News. Have you started voting yet?
Good evening, Chris. Yeah, the first vote has just happened. I'm waiting for the second division. They're going to be 10 tonight, so MPs are going to be here till about 10:30 by my estimation.
Goodness, I've got all the amendments in my hand here. These are the 10 changes that were made by peers to this Rwanda bill. Did the first amendment, was it thrown out by the House of Commons?
Don't know. We haven't had the result yet. I think that amendment adds little, and it just creates more legal debate, frankly. And that's what we need to reduce in this bill. We need to make sure that we don't have more wrangling in the courts, and make sure that Rwanda says what it has agreed to do in its treaty that it signed a few months ago. That's really what we should be aiming for now, getting that operation going so those planes can take off.
That's right. That First Amendment is about maintaining full compliance with domestic and international law, which should be a baseline for any law, you'd imagine. You've been tipped off as one of the rebels, in quotes, Sir Robert. So which of these different measures will you be voting against the government on?
Well, look, I think there are measures in here to make sure that people who come here through the Afghan scheme, those people who supported our country in the West in the fight against extremism by being interpreters and other helpers who, are in danger for their lives. I think if we see a few more of them coming over from Afghanistan, we shouldn't be sending them to Rwanda. I also think that we need to be careful not to cut across the modern-day slavery laws that we led the world in passing. That's a vital part of our the way in which we deal with exploitation in plain sight that's happening across our country. I also think that we should make sure that the reality catches up with the law, and that's why I want ministers to focus on helping and making sure Rwanda does what it says it's going to do, so that we don't have to have more merry-go-round in the Supreme Court and a question of having to satisfy a court whether or not the processes are indeed safe. We need to avoid that, and we need to get the law as clear as possible, in my view.
Sir Robert, by my count, that's 3 of the 10 measures and laws you're rebelling on tonight. Is that right?
Yeah, it's about that. I mean, the government will indeed carry these measures tonight. The question now is what the Lords do on Wednesday. I think that even if there are further ping-pongs, as we call it, the government should get this bill through before Easter, which is crucial for their timing, in order to make progress on getting the operations going here to deal with this, what is an innovative, groundbreaking approach, which other countries in Europe and the rest of the world are looking at very carefully.
Do you worry, though, that you're helping out Labour here by trying to amend the law passed back to you? It's more support the measures put in there by peers. You're undermining your colleagues in Parliament. Why are you supporting unelected peers?
No, Chris, you're breaking up a bit, but I get the gist of it. I'm not supporting the Labour Party. I mean, I tell you this about the Labour Party. They keep on talking a game about immigration. Basically, they're denying the fact that the government is making progress on shutting down the hotels, reducing the number of small boats, dealing with the Albanian problem, and getting a more of a grip on this problem than ever before. I don't hear anything new from Labour. I just hear the same old stuff reheated. They have no sensible approach to this and are trying to say as little as possible. What I'm trying to do is make sure that this bill works. You know, Keir Starmer has said that he wouldn't support the Rwanda scheme even if it worked. I mean, that frankly is an extreme point of view that we should be rejecting. I want to make sure that this works and that we are, insulated from further challenges in court. And that's why I'm supporting some of these amendments, but not all of them.
OK. Well, Sir Robert Buckland, for In Between Votes, you join us tonight for State of the Nation. We really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us from Westminster Hall. I'm joined now by Dr Omar Hamoud Gallego, Fellow in Political Science and Public Policy. Dr Omar, will the Rwanda plan work?
No, it will not. I think it's very clear. The Prime Minister has said so in the past. Several ministers have said so.
The PM thinks it will work.
Similar. No. He said in the past, he's been on the record saying when he was Chancellor, this is a plan that should be rubbished. And absolutely, I agree with him. It's a plan that is never going to work. It's absolutely costly. As you said earlier, for 300 individuals to be relocated to Rwanda, that will cost more than £500 million. How is this even possible?
To be fair to the PM, if you were here, he'd be saying he was looking at the plans as Chancellor on a value for money basis.
Absolutely, there is no value for money, right?
But
absolutely.
The point is, it's meant to break the model of the people gang.
Absolutely. So as an expert who works on this, right, that's why you called me at the London School of Economics, I can tell you, having studied this phenomenon, these policies for years, none of this works. Why is it that no one else does it? Because it doesn't work. And it's extremely costly. Only Australia tried something similar, and they're actually stopping it. And there have been several instances where international bodies have said to Australia the conditions under which people were held were horrendous. And effectively, Australia had to stop in October 2021. What instead should be done is meaningfully decrease the backlog of asylum applications. There are more than 100,000 of them are currently we're still waiting for them to be sort of processed. We should give asylum seekers the right to work while they're here, because one of the reasons why this is very costly is because we don't allow them to work while the process is pending.
Then they just pay into the black economy.
But we don't
have ID cards here.
Absolutely, but they don't do it anyway, right? I mean, even if you do give them permission to do it, they will just go and work somewhere else, where exactly they will be exploited by different criminal groups. So effectively, the only people who benefit from how things currently work, and it would be worse when this policy is implemented.
Countries are looking, aren't they, at offshore processing?
They are looking.
Germany,
absolutely.
Deal with Albania, Turkey.
But that's because of the elections, right? We all know that the European elections are scaring loads of politicians, and that's why people in, centre-right, especially governments across the region, and also Ursula von der Leyen from the European Commission, they are looking into this.
Australia worked, Dr. Omar, didn't it?
It did not. Let me tell you what happened instead. In the 12 months following the introduction of this policy of offshore processing, meaning that everyone who arrived to Australia would then be sent to the other islands to be processed, actually the numbers increased. And then what happened in Australia that allegedly worked is that there were some, what we know are illegal pushbacks, meaning the military took the boats and then sent them back.
Which can't happen here.
It cannot happen. The Royal Navy has said they will not agree to it because it's against international and humanitarian law, right? So what we should do is focus on the backlog and create resettlement programs with safe route for asylum seekers, and as well as, of course, engaging with our European partners so that they have an incentive to actually fight these smuggling groups. But of course, that will entail resettling individuals from European mainland to Britain.
So you think it's going to, even if it passes if the House of Commons, House Laws, it'll just be ditched by Labour?
Absolutely. No. Apart from that, the fact is that many of the people, what they will do, and I can tell you who will benefit from this, criminal groups. Because what we'll do is that people will take even more dangerous routes to come into the UK, they will not apply for asylum, and they will stay in the shadow economy, benefiting criminal groups. So that's who this policing is benefiting, criminal groups at the cost of more than £500 million for 300 people.
Well, on that note, Dr Omar Hamoud-Gallego from the LSE, thank you for joining us, coming to the studio tonight. And I'm sure the MPs will not listen to that because they'll be put off from voting altogether. After a break, we'll be diving into the plot to replace Rishi Sunak with a sword-wielding Lord President of the Privy Council, Penny Mordaunt. But this week's evening's developments be enough to rally the troops around the PM? We'll wait and see.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Absenteeism and parents whose children miss a week or more of school face increased fines in a government drive to tackle absence.
This is another one of those government policies which has done nothing to improve the education of our children. In fact, since this was originally introduced some 10 years ago, the educational standards for our children, the 11-year-olds who can't read when they go up to primary school, have got worse and worse and worse. So it's not working. So what do? They just increase the fine, like that may make it work. Most of the parents who get fined are taking their kids out so they can take them on a holiday before the holiday companies push the prices up. And frankly, as a parent, if I've got a £600 discount on my holiday versus a £60 fine, I'm going to go for the £60
You'll suffer
fine.
the fine.
Yeah.
Let's not forget the other huge absence that children had recently during COVID. Schools were closed for months and months on end. Online learning was really not making up for that. So how can, it's very difficult for the government to say it was fine for us to take your kids out of school for months, but if you take them off for a few days to go to Disneyland, then you are the worst parent ever and you should
But also,
be
it's the pandemic that caused some of the problems with absenteeism now.
Absolutely.
Because the mental health issues that some of these children now have.
And there are tens of thousands of children, they call them ghost children, that have simply disappeared from the school register. So it would be nice. It's really, really scary situation. I'm not saying that the government is, taking great measures.
Well, I think one of their plans is to have a national register, which would help with that.
Which would definitely help. But I think they can't deal with the real problem, so they're going after actually perfectly, decent parents who are just taking the odd day off, to save money, frankly.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm Christopher Hope, GB News' political editor, and this is State of the Nation, live on GB News. Now, we've been discussing tonight's Rwanda votes, and here are some of your views. Paul says, "Dear Chris," he's very polite, Paul, "Yvette Cooper says she's going to tackle the gangs running the boats across to the UK. Exactly how is she going to do that? She can't set foot in France. What powers does she think she has? It's all hot air. Nothing will be done." And Alan says, "Chris, how is this a deterrent when only 300 refugees are going to be accepted by Rwanda?" Well, we'll hear the answer to that soon, I imagine, both from the government and the Rwandan government. But tonight's events might signal a turning point on the Rwanda deportation policy, as the government is expected to win the remainder of its votes against the Lord's amendments, which might just be enough to see the plan come to fruition after nearly 2 years of being put on hold. And that's 3 prime ministers ago, by the way. But the problems for the current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, don't end there. Over the weekend, it is reported that a right-wing plot was brewing to oust Mr Sunak and replace him with Penny Mordaunt. And whilst I was sceptical about this story, I do have it from 2 sources today, MPs, that there are as many as 40 no confidence letters sent to Graham Brady, the chairman of the 910-2 committee of backbench Tory MPs, who decide on who becomes the next Tory leader. But who better to ask than the usual host of this programme, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, who had this to say earlier.
Well, I'm sorry not to be with you this evening personally in person, and I am grateful to Christopher Hope for stepping into the breach. But I'm literally voting now in the Rwanda divisions to send back to the House of Lords, to the unelected chamber, its objections to a scheme that will help us secure our borders and make sure that people have no incentive to come here illegally because they won't be able to stay. But what I wanted to talk about most of all was the leadership of the Conservative Party, because there have been rumours, stories, speculation abounding in our newspapers over the last 48 hours about a challenge to Rishi Sunak, whether the leader of the House of Commons, Penny Mordaunt, is about to be shoehorned in as a unity candidate. Well, I think this is crazy stuff. It's madness. The Conservative Party has already changed leader too many times since the last election. The mandate that we have for a Prime Minister gets thinner and thinner every time we change it. And we need, as Conservatives, to calm down and support the Prime Minister. Why do I say that? Well, I think there are some positive signs that the economy is beginning to pick up, that the recession didn't seem to last very long. If the Bank of England were halfway competent, it would be beginning to cut interest rates, and that would be helping people who have mortgages. The economy would be beginning to grow. We are getting ahead with some Conservative policies, and the Rwanda one is an example of that. But we also have to show to voters that we are a serious party of government, and changing our leader in the way people seem to change their socks cannot be wise, it cannot be sensible, it cannot imbue the nation with that level of confidence that it needs to have. And so although I've been a critic of Rishi Sunak over the years, I haven't always larded him with praise. I think now is the time for the party to be loyal, to back its leader, to recognise an election is close at hand, and we need to concentrate on that and the manifesto for the British people that we will deliver in the next few months, rather than the vanity, the vainglory, the self-obsession of some politicians who think it's about them. It's not. It's about the country, and it's about the King's government being carried on, as the Duke of Wellington always used to say. I won't be here, but I'm always interested in your views. mailmog@gbnews.com. Let me know what you think, and I'll read some of them out when I'm back tomorrow.
Well, Jacob there mentions the Duke of Wellington. I think we want to worry about right now and what's going on in politics, because I think that somewhat underestimates the tension I've experienced today talking to two MPs who are normally quite calm about the future of their party, but not today and not this week. Now, I'm joined now for a reaction to what Sir Jacob said by former Armed Forces Minister Gordon Brown, Bill Rammell, and Charlie Rowley, former Special Advisor to Theresa May and Michael Gove. And Charlie, to start with you, and the word Michael Gove there is in our script for this programme. Is he behind all this? Is he trying to push Kemi Badenoch or even Penny Mordaunt into number 10?
I don't think so, Chris. I don't think there's much in the stories over the weekend, because, as Jacob was saying, if you chop and change your leader again, the country, forget about the Westminster bubble and forget about everybody who follows politics on a day-to-day basis, I think the country would just be up in arms at the prospect that the Conservative Party has ditched yet another leader to install somebody else. But, you know, sticking with Rishi Sunak, sticking with a guy who seems to be doing a fantastic job in delivering on what he says he's going to do, and that's testament to the votes that are taking place tonight, getting Rwanda up and running, something he said he's going to do, he's got to be able to deliver. And once he's done that, that will change, I think, public opinion in giving the Tory party any hope in winning the next election.
Bill Rammell, you heard Charlie say he's doing a fantastic job, Rishi Sunak. Why is he still 23 points behind in the polls?
Because he's a dreadful Prime Minister and this is a wretched government. I don't think that's in dispute. Week by week, his judgment is really poor. But if Conservative MPs think they can change leader to rescue their skins, I think they are delusional. There would be, you know, I think you reach a tipping point, and I think there would be such a degree of outrage from the public that we're having a fourth Prime Minister in a 5-year Parliament. It's unacceptable. We need a general election.
Well, Charlie Rowley, if Penny Mordaunt is the answer, is it the wrong question the party's asking?
Well, I think it just, shows that whether you mentioned Penny and Kemi, and there'll be, plenty of others, James Cleverly in that mix, who
Rob Jerrick.
That just shows that there is so much talent within the Conservative Party, and I don't know why that's so funny. So it is. Any one of these people could go on to be leader at some point when there's a vacancy, but there isn't, and there won't be for some time because obviously Rishi is doing what he says he's going to do, and we've got inflation figures I think coming out later on this week. If they continue to come down, that's obviously one of the
interest
Prime
rates
Minister's...
too.
One of the Prime Minister's top 5 priorities...
no benefit for this. They cut national insurance, nothing happens in a poll. I mean, cutting 4% off national insurance in 3 months is extraordinary, but there's no benefit in the polls.
And I think because it's been a difficult time politically, and part of this internal party divisions that you constantly sort of hear about and read about over the weekend, that doesn't help the party's cause. But I think when it does come to the next general election, the polls will, they'll narrow anyway. How much? Obviously, we'll have to wait and see, but a lot of that will narrow because of the work in which and the record that Rishi will be able to put forward as someone who is only going to be one of 2 people that are going to become Prime Minister.
You're rubbing your hands in Labour, aren't you, Bill Remmell?
Well, we want a general election. But look, what the turmoil demonstrates is the extraordinary weakness of Rishi Sunak's position. This story at the weekend, Penny Mordaunt could have killed it by going on the record and saying, I'm having nothing to do with this. She hasn't done that. She's got friends of hers who are briefing the media. Collective cabinet responsibility is virtually broken down. I mean, Grant Shapps was talking about 3% of GDP being spent on defence the week after the budget. The Prime Minister's got no authority. Yes. And I think the biggest example, this afternoon, unbelievably, Number 10 were briefing that Penny Mordaunt shouldn't be leader of the Tory party because she's going to lose her seat at the general election. She's got a 16,000 majority.
Now, Bill, I'm going to break into that with the news from the House of Commons chamber, where MPs have voted 328 to 250, a majority of 78, to reject Lord's Amendment 1 of the Safety of Rwanda bill. We'll keep going back to those voting results as the evening progresses. Charlie, was the big mistake here dumping Boris Johnson? That's the original sin, because you're removing a leader there elected by MPs, a mandate from people outside of this place, outside of Westminster, the public, the voters. By dropping him, it suddenly becomes easy to replace PMs as you go forward.
I don't think so. I think, look, 50 ministers resigned from his government. Yep. You've got to, and on the back of COVID, which brought this whole country to a lockdown, needed to do so because of the interventions that needed to take place. But when you have in Downing Street then people breaking those rules, when you are setting them, it is a total break of trust within the public.
Is that enough to replace the Prime Minister?
I think it's a good enough reason, and that's why 50 ministers obviously resigned. But I think, of course, time's a wonderful thing and time's a healer, and, we can look back with hindsight. And Boris has still got a lot to give. He's a brilliant communicator. He's a brilliant campaigner. He's effective on the doorstep. That's why I would very much like to see him back on the campaign, and I think the Prime Minister obviously welcomed him, but I'm sure we'll see Theresa May on the campaign trail, we'll see David Cameron out there as well. All 5 Prime Ministers that we've had over the last 6 years will be going out there and delivering the message that you've got to get behind Rishi, you've got to vote Conservative again for all of the things that they've said that they're going to do and taking this country forward.
Swiftly to you, Bill Remmell, who do you fear the most, Rishi Sunak or Penny Mordaunt as the Tory leader?
I don't fear any of them.
Come on. Which one do you worry about more, then?
No, I don't. It's the Conservative record in government that is the problem.
14 years.
You go back to Boris Johnson. He was convicted by a Tory-dominated committee of repeatedly lying to the House of Commons. We had the chaos of Liz Truss's regime. And, we've now got, immigration letting rip 3 times as high as it was when Labour left office. That actually means GDP per head, which is the best indicator, is the worst since 1955.
Okay.
That's what the Tories have presided over, and whoever they put up, I think they're heading for the exit.
OK, well, listen, thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Bill, for coming and having a debate about the future of the PM, which could be moved forward this week, I wonder. After the break, the Labour Party is facing fresh criticism for its plans to impose VAT on private school fees, as new reports suggest it will force a quarter of pupils into the state sector.
Hello and welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. Rain spreads east during the next 24 hours, breezy along with that rain, but it does turn drier and brighter later on Tuesday. Weather fronts responsible attached to this area of low pressure anchored off the west of Scotland overnight, and those weather fronts will bring outbreaks of persistent rain to the north and the west initially before transferring east. The rain does turn more showery. It tends to fragment through the night, but still some of those showers will be quite heavy, particularly in the north and the west. Not much rain reaching the southeast at all. In fact, some clear spells remain here, but with the cloud and the increased breeze, gales for the far northwest. Well, it is going to be a mild start to Tuesday, albeit a cloudy and a showery run. Quite a lot of showers, I think, around during Tuesday morning. Breaking up into the afternoon to hit and miss downpours, most likely northern and central England seeing those downpours with some brightness either way, and actually feeling warm in any sunny spells, 17 or 18 Celsius, but more rain is on the way, spreading up from the southwest on Tuesday night and into Wednesday, reaching the Grampians and persisting through much of the day across eastern and northern England, Wales and the Midlands, before eventually turning back to showers. Further outbreaks of rain to come on Thursday, particularly towards the northwest, where it will be windy and cool, and then showers to come on Friday.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. I'm still Christopher Hope, GB News' political editor, and this is State of the Nation live on GB News. I'm joined now by the usual host of this programme, Tory MP for North East Somerset, the Right Honourable Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg MP. Jacob, why aren't you doing your job? Why am I doing it for you?
Because I'm voting in Parliament, which is a very important job, and I do GB News when I'm available and free from parliamentary commitments. Obviously, Parliament has to come first. That's in the deal with the voters of North East Somerset.
Yes, and are you anticipating that all 10 of these amendments from the House of Lords will be voted down tonight?
Yes, very good majorities so far, strong turnout from the government benches, very little by way of rebellion, a really firm message back to their lordships that the government, the democratic arm of our constitution, expects to get this business through, and I'm very pleased we're sending back all the House of Lords amendments.
You're mingling in the House of Commons lobbies tonight. That's where the real action takes place. You and I know that, as MPs discuss the future of everything, including your leader. Is the PM in there? Have you rubbed shoulders with him? Is he in good spirits?
The PM is in there. I haven't spoken to him personally, but there's a lot of support for him, actually. It's really interesting talking to people in the members' lobby, and as you're round and about, this sort of coup that's been talked up over the weekend seems to be melting away, that who it's been briefed by, nobody quite knows. Even Penny Mordaunt says it's nothing to do with her. So it's just one of those things you get like a little firecracker going off that then disappears into the night.
Isn't it possible, though, that some MPs are campaigning on local elections now and hearing what the people out there, outside of your little bubble, think about the Prime Minister, and they're reacting to that?
Well, I think you phrase it unfairly, that you can see from the opinion polls that people aren't delighted with the Conservative Party at large. But this isn't personal to the Prime Minister particularly. It is we've been in office for a long time. We need to show that we're doing things like the Rwanda plan to rebuild faith and trust with voters, and that's why tonight's very important. But I don't think you should personalise it to the Prime Minister. I think it's very hard to believe that if it were suddenly to become the leader of the House, that this would transform our fortunes.
Well, the view amongst Labour MPs and frontbenchers I speak to is they fear Penny Mordaunt the most. I mean, isn't the problem, it goes back to the original sin, Jacob Rees-Mogg, that your party dumped Boris Johnson when he had a mandate from his MPs and his members and the electorate to be Prime Minister?
Well, you know I think that. I campaigned very firmly to keep Boris Johnson. I thought it was a mistake to get rid of him. But the Conservative Party is the party of government. We've got a leader. It's ridiculous in an election year to be talking about changing leader again. We need to back him, present him to the electorate, and do everything we can to get Rishi Sunak re-elected. That's in the interests of the country, because the alternative is Sir Keir Starmer, and I can't think that would be good for us.
And just finally, Sir Jacob, before you go back to vote, what should he do to change? He's still 20 points plus behind in the polls. It looks like Labour's lead is stuck like wet cement. What would you be advising him now, were you in his study in Downing Street?
I don't think wet cement is particularly stuck, as it happens. I think the thing about wet cement is that it can be moved about. You see it coming out of those great machines that go around as they churn it out. So I think you're right about wet cement. It can be moved, it can be changed. We need to do Rwanda. We need to show that we can govern competently. We need to ensure that we deal with legal and illegal migration firmly, and we need to push on with good economic management. The Bank of England should cut interest rates, and then we will have a good offering for the electorate come the general election. I must go and vote. You can hear the bells probably in the background. Ask not for whom the bell tolls.
Well, it tolls for thee. Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, thank you for joining us tonight on your programme, State of the Nation.
And thank you for standing in. You do it too well. It worries me. Thank you.
No, you're the master. I'm the apprentice. Back to the studio with another Rees-Mogg, Nunciata Rees-Mogg, Jacob's sister, and of course Amy Nicole-Turner, the author and broadcaster. Welcome you both to this excellent programme. What do you think? Has he got a chance here? Rishi Sunak, can he survive the week?
I personally think he's got to. That I do agree with what Jacob was just saying, that you can't change your leader every 2 minutes and expect to be taken seriously. You have to take the country seriously, you have to take the electors seriously, but you have to give them an offer they can vote for, and Rishi's got to take that opportunity.
Amy, what's your take on the future of the PM?
Well, I'm happy that Nunciata said that we should take the country seriously, because I think what the country is crying out for now is a general election. Come on. The Tories currently are as unpopular as when Truss was in government. The national insurance cut seemingly was supposed to be popular, actually lost them 2 more points. Just give us our choice. Give it up. Give it up.
I think a huge opportunity was missed by Jeremy Hunt, that if he'd had a really bold budget that actually went to people's pockets and made them feel that things were on the heading in the right direction, which the economy is, but people are not feeling it yet, then he could have started to have an impact. Instead, he twiddled on the edges and taxed fags and made very little difference to anyone's balance sheet at the end of the week.
Now, one of the big issues of this week has been Labour's attempts to put VAT on private school fees. It could raise as much as £1.7 billion to the Treasury coffers. But most importantly, Sir Keir Starmer has already unveiled 7 different policies that could be paid for by this tax hike. What do you think about this idea?
Well, I mean, it's already been proven that their maths doesn't begin to add up. I'm rather concerned that we may be about to get a government that doesn't seem to know what a supply and demand curve is, let alone a LAFA one. The Adam Smith Institute has looked into these figures rather more carefully. It's looked at the Greek example where they followed a similar policy and the effect it had there. And instead of it raising £1.7 billion, it will lose the taxman £1.3 billion. Being out by £3 billion is not small change.
Do you know something that would certainly increase growth, economic growth, would be social mobility. What is hindering social mobility, in my opinion, would be keeping these elite schools. I think a lot of people would be surprised that the schools aren't already paying VAT. The amount of things that we pay VAT on, yet private schools are exempt from that. I think that's the real story here.
I think we should have much wider VAT exemptions.
One thing that
of course we should have better schools. We should return to the very, very successful model we used to have, the grammar schools. Absolutely, we can. That just needs a small change in legislation.
Just to pick up on the Adam Smith research, though, which I actually thought was really interesting, there was something that Maxwell Marlowe pointed out, which was that it will be the independent sector is massively diverse. You've got your Eatons at the top, and then you've got your smaller independent schools.
Which could be in trouble from the...
Of course, because which are the schools in that sector? And hang on, let's just say that, because I think the viewers need to know, 7% of kids that go to these schools in the first place, but it's the small independent sector schools that depend on the tuition fees. Your Eatons, your Westminsters, they don't depend on tuition fees. They'll be fine.
A lot of which are special needs specialist schools as well has to be remembered. And you are talking about over 500,000 children.
I think it's a blunt instrument, I agree, which has been highlighted by this, but I think it's a necessary instrument because the status quo is 70% of judges, they went to private school, 30% of MPs, they went to
jealousy politics.
Oh, jealousy or fairness.
Well, Annunziata and Amy Nicholson, thank you for joining us both tonight. Thank you to my panel. Coming up, you'll be finding out the latest on what's happening with the royal family and their mysteriously edited photographs.
On Patrick Christie's tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, another PR disaster for the Princess of Wales. Why is the Palace media team failing to protect our future Queen? We expose a culture of cover-ups on the NHS. Have they lied about your relative's death? MPs are voting on the Rwanda bill tonight after it was savaged by the Lords. But has the Rwandan government now scuppered the scheme? And I speak to the woman who was banned from her own art exhibition and reported to the police for saying kids shouldn't get puberty blockers. It's Patrick Christie's tonight, 9 till 11 p.m. Be there.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Get this right, we all know by now, don't we, that so many NHS workers are abused by people that they're trying to help. We'll all agree that that is pretty damn disgraceful, but what do we do about it? Because now some London hospitals are looking at whether or not they should be able to ban people that do this for a year from those hospital facilities. Is that the way forward? Daniel, do you like this? No abuse, no excuse, that is the campaign?
There's no other choice for most people. It's either the NHS or nothing. And if you're going to take that monopolistic power, then you need, I think, you have responsibilities towards people. You can't cut them off. So there are ways in which, of course, you can bring criminal charges against them. If they've committed a criminal offence, that's fine. They might even be locked up in jail. But what you can't do is cut off health services because you're the only supplier.
Well, yes, I think you can cut it off and you should cut it off. London is very different from everywhere else, and it goes back to a conversation about immigration. The majority of nurses in London are either African or Filipino, and it harks back to their nature and their culture. When you're younger, your parents look after you. When you're older, you look after them. They don't go into homes. So there's a way that a threshold of tolerance they have that is above and beyond most people. So, because I found like when I was younger, most of the nurses were white. Now they work in hospitals in Ascot and Somerset. London is the war zone. I have seen horrific things happen to nurses, and they stay, they show up for work. There's a protection they are owed, beyond owed. And if you abuse something that's offered to you as a part of your citizenship, there should be a penalty for that. For the same reason,
you're obliged to use it. There's no offer involved in the NHS.
But there is an offer, because at the end of the day, like you earn it, you figure out how to get money and go private. So just because you've created something that gives you... No, it's easy. If it's easy...
That's an impossible solution.
They've created something that's kind and easy and beneficial to all, indeed. But it's a good thing for all. Do not abuse it. That simple.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. I remain Christopher Hope, the GB News' political editor, and this is State of the Nation live on GB News. We've been discussing the Labour Party's VAT on private school fees, as well as the Rwanda bill. And here are some of your views on schools. Patricia writes, perhaps Amy should consider what will happen to the children that have transferred to state schools that will cost more than the VAT paid will bring in. Madness, politics of envy. So childish, Pat. Is Pat right?
Respond to Pat, you know.
Yeah, go on.
So I think it costs £6,000 a year to state educate one child.
Okay.
And the suggestions that are being put forward are predominantly by more right-wing think tanks who, of course, want to keep private education. But actually, there is very little evidence to say that any of these children would leave. And actually, in the independent sector, children are being constantly turfed out by the schools anyway.
It's actually about 7,500 every 4 billion.
We've been past this one already, but thank you for I hope you heard what Amy had to say. And on an unrelated note, Paul said, evening, quick question, Christopher, why are you nicknamed Chopper?
Oh, see, everybody
I'm doing my dad Dennis's head in, and you can't find the answer on Google. Right, Dennis, where are you? Dennis, I'm called Chopper because I used to work for the Scotsman newspaper, and my email was chope@scotsman.com. I was called Chope and then Chopper. It's for no other reason. I'm so sorry. Moving on. Last week, a number of leading photo agencies, including the Associated Press, issued a kill notice about a photograph released by Buckingham Palace of the Princess of Wales and her 3 children, saying it had been doctored, prompting all sorts of conspiracy theories about the whereabouts of the princess. However, more concerns have risen today about a suggestion of another photoshopped image issued by the royal family. In this case, one of our dearly much-missed late Queen, with her great-grandchildren, published in April last year to commemorate what would have been her 97th birthday, supposedly taken by the princess. And look again at that photograph. That is one of my most favourite photographs of our late Queen. So I would expect more conspiracy theories to follow this latest development. I'm joined now in the GB News studio by our same panel. Thank you both for remaining with us, and by Duncan Larkham, former royal editor of The Sun. Duncan, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us tonight on State of the Nation. Are you surprised about this row about photoshopping, and is it really a big deal? Because most people do this with family snaps.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of people that just think, so what? And I can understand that reaction. But these pictures issued by the palace they're moments in history. They're very important. And if they've been played with and doctored in any way, that does raise some quite serious questions about the honesty and transparency of the palace machine, if you like.
Is the problem, Duncan, that maybe the palace machine doesn't really think like journalists do, particularly with AI threatening a lot of professions at the moment? People are hypersensitive about putting out photographs that may have been tinkered with, and that's why you saw those 3 agencies object last Sunday night.
Yes, I mean, I think you're right. I think there's been a big concern for quite some time with Kate, who's a very, very keen amateur photographer, taking it into her own hands to take pictures, to release them to the press for us to lap up and fawn over when they're not actually taken by a professional photographer who's a journalist, a photojournalist, and who's actually not going to change anything for fear of, my goodness, the repercussions if you did as a journalist. You'd be in trouble.
Can I ask you, I wonder what started this. I know that they started with Kate doing it herself, and as a professional journalist myself, I thought it was because she wanted to control the copyright, how those photographs were used in future use. And by doing it yourself as a photographer, you can control where those photographs are used.
Yes, I think that's right. I think and Kate's been doing this for a number of years, pretty much since she started to have children. I think she would release the birthday snaps and in a way take control over her own sort of photographic destiny. But she's been caught out, and I think the reaction that we saw last week is enough to, I'm sure, convince her that photoshopping pictures is really something that she's not going to be able to do again.
Just finally, do you feel sorry for her, Duncan?
I think she's subject to a lot of online trolling and rumours, but I think last week was a real big gaffe. Probably her most serious gaffe. She's not really. She's Kate Middleton. She doesn't do anything wrong, and I think this time she really did.
That's right. Well, listen, Duncan Larkham, ex from the Sun, thank you for joining us tonight on State of the Nation. Still with me in the studio here in Westminster is my panel, former Brexit Party MEP and journalist Annunciata Rees-Mogg, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol-Turner. And to you first, Amy, is it a big deal or not?
Well, you know,
the second photograph has emerged.
It feels like everybody thinks this is a very big deal. And, you know, I thought it would be something like what Prince Andrew got up to that would bring down the royals finally. But who would have ever guessed it'd be photoshopped? Yes. But I really feel like this is just... Have you seen those apps where they say best shot? Right? So you have a series of photos. How difficult is it to get 3 kids to all look that perfect?
Yes.
So if you take a series of pictures...
Well, they're royal children, Amy. Perhaps they are perfect.
Well, and then you mash it together. I think that's all that this is. But the world has gone mad, and the conspiracy theories have been quite...
Annunciata, I've got to ask you, can your brother Photoshop anything?
Probably about as well as I can. No, neither of us have a clue. But I think we should go back to the Henry VIII's day, where the portrait of Anne of Cleves was so flattering that he saw her and was appalled at her ugliness. So perhaps the royals should re-employ hard-working portrait painters to make sure they look as they want to look.
Perhaps we should issue just annual portrait paintings and forget this still photographs. I mean, I feel really sad about that Queen picture, because I think that was a wonderful, happy photograph of the grandchildren.
But I think, you know, if you take my explanation, and it still can be, it's just the kind of combination of all the pictures put together. But can you imagine? I'm quite surprised that people haven't come up and said Meghan Markle photoshopped it.
Yeah. Well, let's not bring her up.
Photoshops her own, apparently.
We've been there.
It would seem every celeb does, and I just can't get wound up with this. I just hope that the Princess of Wales makes a swift recovery and can come back to
and explains what happened with her illness in a way which is appropriate. Listen, we're out of time. That's all from me. Up next is my old pal Patrick Christis. What's on the bill of fare this evening, Patrick?
We all know that's not why you're called Chopper. OK, so I've got loads on tonight. An NHS culture of cover-up and deceit. The Rwanda vote, what remains of it, live, of course. Palace PR gurus throwing Kate under the bus. An exclusive with the artist that was banned from her own exhibition because she didn't think children should have puberty blockers. And Thatcher is absolutely in no way anything like Hitler or Bin Laden, a phrase I never thought I would have to say.
Splendid, Patrick. Well, that's all from me, from presenting for Jacob Rees-Mogg. He'll be back, hopefully, tomorrow. Thank you to my brilliant panel. Thank you both. You've been terrific. You've held my hand throughout. I'm Christopher Hope, and this has been State of the Nation. Coming up after me is the weather. I hope it's good.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. Rain spreads east during the next 24 hours, breezy along with that rain, but it does turn drier and brighter later on Tuesday. Weather fronts responsible attached to this area of low pressure anchored off the west of Scotland overnight, and those weather fronts will bring outbreaks of persistent rain to the north and the west initially before transferring east. The rain does turn more showery. It tends to fragment through the night, but still some of those showers will be quite heavy, particularly in the north and the west. Not much rain reaching the southeast at all. In fact, some clear spells remain here, but with the cloud and the increased breeze, gales for the far northwest. Well, it is going to be a mild start to Tuesday, albeit a cloudy and a showery run. Quite a lot of showers, I think, around during Tuesday morning. Breaking up into the afternoon to hit and miss downpours, most likely northern and central England seeing those downpours with some brightness either way. And actually, feeling warm in any sunny spells, 17 or 18 Celsius, but more rain is on the way, spreading up from the southwest on Tuesday night and into Wednesday, reaching the Grampians and persisting through much of the day across eastern and northern England, Wales and the Midlands, before eventually turning back to showers. Further outbreaks of rain to come on Thursday, particularly towards the northwest, where it will be windy and cool, and then showers to come on Friday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still time to win our giveaway packed with seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash to make your bank account bloom. Plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching